Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and today I'm stepping away from the usual series I upload for, and doing something I did around this time last December, which was putting on my list for the top 50 hip-hop albums of the year. While you can pretty much always count on hip-hop to deliver plenty of dope projects, people seem to be pushing the hip-hop is dying narrative more in 2024, even a bit more than usual, and I think that was probably due to many of the big hit singles not performing as well as they traditionally have, which led to less hip-hop nominations than we're used to seeing at the Grammys. Fortunately, I put very little stock into things like award shows and huge pop rap singles, so I really couldn't care less if hip-hop wasn't the single most dominant genre on the Billboard Top 100, nor do I think that's indicative of the genre dying. And I know there's plenty of other hip hop fans out there who probably feel the same way, because 2024 was just littered with quality LPs. All you have to do is take the minimal time required to look for them. That being said, this list was even tougher than last year's because not only did I have to navigate the main 50, but I ended up with so many honorable mentions that there's dozens of other albums I won't even have time to recommend at all. So I should probably get into the projects that didn't quite make the cut. But first, I just wanted to say, keep in mind that, like last year's list, I'm going to be limiting myself to one project per artist, since so many talented MCs and producers dropped this year, and I really can't afford to give two spots to one person, when I could be using the opportunity to squeeze in another legend or up-and-comer. Now that our only real ground rule is set, I can get into these honorable mentions. Starting with the enigmatic and hilarious RXKNephew, who as usual released a laundry list of projects this year, but the one I wanted to recommend was his Dead Fresh tape that he dropped towards the end of 2024. Then after him, I have Wu-Tang alum Killah Priest, with his Abraxas, Rebis, Simha Pleroma LP, and following that it's Injury Reserve's own RiTchie with a T, who released his first solo project this year under the name RiTchie, titled Triple Digits 112. Next up, we have Cypress Hill's own DJ Muggs, who came together with Raz Fresco for The Eternal Now. Then it's veteran Detroit battle rapper Marv 1, who really impressed me with his personal and introspective LP I'm Fine, Thanks for Asking, just not quite enough to make that top 50. After him, we have an OG whose lineage stretches back even further, that being old school legend Godfather Don, who put out two quality projects in 2024, but I'd probably have to recommend the Ill Tone Generator if I had to choose one. Then it's LA underground pioneer Planet Asia, who also had an insanely busy year, and the LP of his I want to recommend is definitely Trust the Chain 2. Next up, it's the conscious Atlanta collective Arrested Development, who proved they're still going strong through their Bullets in the Chamber album. And after them, I have a triple threat in the form of Daru Jones, MonoNeon, and Bumpy Knuckles, with their groovy record titled Phunkin Trybe Interludes. Following those guys, it's Chupacabra, another collaborative effort, but this time between West Coast legend DJ Quik and JasonMartin. And then it would be the awesome underground duo Cella Dwellas, who released their first project in nearly 30 years with Talk Nice. After that, we have someone who kind of broke the rule by having multiple slots on my top 50 last year, that being Real Badman, who teamed up with MC Lukah for the topical LP The Village Needs Water, The Village Needs Peace. Then it's hip-hop royalty MC Lyte with One of One, an impressive return album that doubles as her first since 1998. After her, we have someone who you may have expected to make the top 50. However, while it was nowhere near bad, I just didn't find myself being quite as blown away by this thing as I had hoped to be, that being Ghostface Killah with Set the Tone, Guns N' Roses. And it was an even worse case with Ice Cube's latest release, Man Down, especially when he tries backing up his whack political stances in his raps. Next up, it's the god Fahim and NicoJP with their short and sweet project Snakes. And following them, I have a producer who was super prolific throughout his run at Def Jux Records, that being RJD2 with his immersive instrumental project Visions Out of Limelight. Then it's 3 6 Mafia's own Juicy J, who had his love for jazz music on full display on his Ravenite Social Club LP, And after him, we have Slago and Homeboy Sandman with their dual effort And We Are Here. You also can't forget the seasoned underground producer Blockhead with his latest beat tape, Mortality Is Lit. And another album I wanted to shout out that was the result of a meeting of minds comes from Fat Tony, Fatboi Sharif, and Steel Tip Dove with Brain Candy. We also have I've Never Been Here Before, the proper solo debut from Eric the Architect of Flatbush Zombies, along with Missionary, the long-awaited reunion album between Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, that just barely missed the main 50. The last couple of releases I want to mention before getting to the actual list include the pretty ambitious and catchy 2093 by Yeet, and finally Bruiser Wolf of Danny Brown's Bruiser Brigade with My Story Got Stories, the follow-up to his 2021 Breakout LP, as well as the TV62 album that the Bruiser Brigade Collective put out that same year. Now that we have those honorable mentions out of the way, I'm going to get right into the main list, where I'm going to start off giving little to no background at first. Then gradually, as we make our way further down the list, I'll get a little more in depth. Though again, the main purpose here is really just to kind of show what my list is and the order, so I'm not going to be giving 5-minute reviews of every pick here. But anyways, kicking us off at number 50, we have the producer Enoch, a longtime member of the insanely talented Florida-based underground hip-hop crew Sign, with the diverse and enjoyable Waiting for Something to Happen. And then following him at 49, it's Norwegian producer and DJ Ol Burger Beats, with his jazzy, soulful LP 74 Out of Time. After that, for number 48, I went with Canadian duo London Drugs, with their feature-heavy release Affiliated 2, and at number 47, we have a long-standing fixture of modern New York underground hip-hop, that being Action Bronson, who delivered again with his latest project, titled Johann Sebastian Baklava the Doctor. Next up at 46, we have old-school veterans Donald D. and Brother B, who after nearly 40 years made a surprising and commendable return as the B-Boys, with their latest LP, We Get Down. And then following those legends at number 45, we have another pioneer who's been contributing to the culture since the mid-80s, LL Cool J, who actually garnered a decent amount of buzz and conversation around his first full-length release in over a decade, titled The Force. Getting a bit more contemporary at number 44, I have my favorite project that Griselda affiliate and monster lyricist Rome Streets dropped this year, which for me would probably have to be the Hatton Garden Hold Up album he dropped with Derringer. Then at 43, it's the Grammy winner himself, Killer Mike, who wasted no time following up last year's crazy run with Michael and the Mighty Midnight Revival, Songs for Saints and Sinners. Coming in at number 42, I have the super promising, character-packed Previous Industries, which is an alternative hip-hop supergroup of sorts, consisting of 3 longtime friends and master wordsmiths, those being Video Game Dave, Open Mike Eagle, and Still Rift, who brought a completely unique approach with their debut LP, Service Merchandise, and then following them up at 41, we have A1 and Parental, who came together to craft an insightful and polished record with Sublime. For number 40, I chose The Great Bailout, the newest studio full-length from More Mother, an incredibly forward-thinking, confrontational, and experimental artist who uses genres like harsh and black noise to create these vast and distorted soundscapes that sort of test the waters for what we conventionally think of when we hear the term hip-hop. And after her at 39, it's Conway the Machine, who put out one of the more focused and consistent efforts we've seen from him in recent years with Slant Face Killah. Next, for number 38, we have another long-standing figure of this grimy coke rap wave that's taken over New York, that being Huss Kingpin, who teamed up with Little Brother's own Ninth Wonder to give us a fire batch of wavy, dope-selling background music with the Super Goat. And then at number 37, I went with Juxtaposed Echoes, the densely packed, lyrically potent latest LP from a team of talented up-and-comers News Tyrant and M25. Coming in at 36, we have one of the most unique and idiosyncratic rappers currently at it, that being Lucid, one half of the groundbreaking duo Arm& Hammer alongside Billy Woods, who fed the underground once again this year with his latest LP titled Revelator. And then for number 35, while it pains me to put him this low, I have Absol's Soul Burger, which as usual is full of unparalleled wordplay and double entendres, but truthfully at the end of the day it wasn't one of my favorite pieces of Solo's discography. At number 34, we have Griselda and BSF alum Benny the Butcher, who sounds just as hungry on his latest Everybody Can't Go album as he did when he was breaking onto the scene decades ago. And then ironically, following Benny at 33, I coincidentally chose someone he still has an unresolved beef with to my knowledge, that being Freddie Gibbs, who pleasantly surprised me with You Only Die Once, sounding as polished and practiced with his flows as we've ever heard him, over a killer infectious set of instrumentals. Switching gears a bit, for number 32, I went with Rhymesayer's veteran brother Ali, who's been making thought-provoking, introspective records for decades at this point. But he really found the perfect partner in producer Unjust, who he teamed up with for their dreamlike Love and Service LP. And at number 31, it's Curly Castro and Prem Rock, who together make up the noisy and adventurous duo Shrapnel, one of the more exciting acts currently on the Backwoods Studios roster, who gave us arguably their most focused and well-executed project to date, with Nobody Planning to Leave. For number 30, we have the extremely gifted rapper/producer Navy Blue, who had already been consistently improving and outdoing himself ever since he first appeared on my radar through his feature on Earl Sweatshirt's 2018 Some Rap Songs album. But while Memoirs and Armor is a relatively short listen, it's an undeniably enjoyable one that I found myself constantly returning to throughout the year. Then at 29, I chose one of the multiple projects that Queens-based MC Heems dropped this year, who at this point in his career has all but completely separated himself from the music he made with Das Racist and even Sweatshop Boys to a degree. But as much as I fucked with both La Fondar and Vina, I ultimately had to go with the former, which was a collaboration with the producer Lapgan, just because it includes such an elite set of guest appearances. For 28, we have one of the new faces on the channel, but I'm definitely glad I did stumble across this rapper-producer combo of Young Morpheus and Alexander Spit, because their Waking Up and Choosing Violence LP is a minimal, understated, yet pretty innovative piece of hip-hop that definitely has me excited for whatever both talented artists have coming up next. At number 27, we have yet another old school legend who first kind of made a name for himself in that golden age of hip-hop, that being the Juice Crew's own Masta Ace. But this dude's remained absolutely relentless since those days, making sure to keep the fans fed by various means, be it his extensive solo discography, the projects he dropped with Masta Ace Incorporated, or top-tier LPs like the one he released earlier this year, Richmond Hill, which was the latest in a long line of collaborations between Ace and the incredibly skilled, frankly underrated producer Marco Polo. Following them at number 26, we have a much younger and more contemporary name, Denzel Curry, who I've been a giant supporter of since his breakout N64 mixtape in 2013, but he's been so prolific and consistent with his output throughout the last decade that I pretty much never worry about the quality of his next project, since it's pretty much all but guaranteed he won't only deliver, but he'll somehow push himself and attempt new ideas with each release. And he rewarded that faith once again this year with the completed volumes of The King of the Mischievous South. And then from there, we officially make the halfway point in the list, where for number 25, I have another fresh, exciting act to definitely keep an eye on in the coming future, that being Revival Season, who crafted this brash, tongue-in-cheek, punk-inspired hip-hop LP with Golden Age of Self-Snitching. And after them at 24, we have the last of the three core Griselda members, Westside Gunn, who finally put out his long-awaited, feature-filled Still Praying album, hosted by DJ Drama. Next up at number 23, we have Mike, another alternative rapper who's been steadily progressing and improving with each release, who this time teamed up with producer Tony Seltzer for the conceptual and atmospheric Pinball. And after those guys, for number 22, I picked a truly one-of-a-kind voice in the form of Tierra Whack, who outdid her already stellar Whack World debut EP from 2018 with the more fleshed out, personal, and eccentric Worldwide Whack, which I can guarantee you doesn't sound quite like anything else you'll hear in 2024. Following her, coming in at number 21, it's Gangrene, the underground duo comprised of The Alchemist and Oh No, who both handle rapping and production and blew me away with their Heads I Win, Tails You Lose album. Their first full-length release since 2015's You Disgust Me, which I swear I used to have on vinyl, but I seem to have either misplaced it or sold it. Then breaking into the top 20, we have the veteran Chicago lyricist and ghostwriter Rhymefest, who may have largely built his legacy as a songwriter for others, but here we really get to witness his creativity and artistry in full swing, with his latest LP titled James and Nikki A Conversation. For number 19, we have Long Beach's own Vince Staples, one of the most hilarious and lovable personalities in hip-hop today, who at the flip of a coin can turn into an absolutely serious monster on the mic. And here he continues fleshing out both of those sides of his personality on his newest full-length Dark Times. And then for number 18, I went with another Chicago OG, Common, and New York super producer Pete Rock, two old school icons who've made countless contributions to the culture independently over the years, but came together in 2024 to create their highly impressive The Auditorium Volume 1. And I also have to commend the top tier press run they had for this thing, because these guys seem to be everywhere doing promotion over the last year. For number 17, we have the low-key cerebral artist Mavi, who added another dark, immersive experience to his growing discography with Shadowbox, a project that blends some more contemporary pop sounds and cliches with the more laid-back, personal, and introspective commentary he's become known for. And then at number 16, we have longtime MC Curious, an underground hip-hop figure who's probably best known for his affiliation with MF Doom, and in his latest full-length here called Magician, he proves exactly why he was able to hang with such a top-tier class of lyricists, giving us potent and dense verses over hard-hitting boom-bap production. Coming in at 15, we have the one project from this year I actually discussed on the page in full, that being Zilla Rocca and DJ Chong Wizard, who together form Midnight Suns, and blew me away with their Money Has No Owners album, which I won't really go into depth for here since again I did a full-length review for it on the channel already, but I will leave a link for that down below in the description if you want some more insight and background on this top-tier project. And then at number 14, we have R.A.P. Ferreira, formerly known as Milo, who delivered yet again through his latest collaboration with Fumitaki Tamura, titled The First Fist to Make Contact When We Dap, which saw the one-of-a-kind poet flex his uncanny ability to weave these abstract and coded verses that could honestly warrant an entire college course in breaking its contents down. Then at number 13, we have a project that dropped much earlier on in the year, and while I definitely enjoyed it upon my first few listens, this thing grew on me more and more and I just found myself continuing to go back to it. That being Blue Lips, the latest studio full-length release from TDE's own Schoolboy Q, who in my opinion executed his best piece of work since Blankface here, displaying a wide array of musical influences, and overall delivering one of the most polished and focused efforts in his entire discography so far. Following him at number 12, we have one of the more exciting and one-of-a-kind experiences you'll find from this last year in hip-hop, and while I had never heard of either of these guys prior to this LP, probably since they only debuted in 2023, No Hands by Joey Valence and Bray was an album I kept hearing good things about, and then when I eventually got around to checking it out, I was completely floored by how original and fresh their approach to hip-hop was, while still paying clear homage to acts like Beastie Boys. In fact, these guys managed to sound like a more modernized version of the iconic trio, which at first glance might seem corny or outdated on paper, but somehow this fresh-faced duo manages to pull it off, and proves that really any era of hip-hop can still be made viable for a younger audience if you are creative and inspired enough. Taking the number 11 spot, We have the experimental hip-hop pioneer and veteran Beans of Anti-Pop Consortium, who even after a good 30 years in the game, is showing zero signs of slowing down, giving us arguably his most ambitious solo effort to date, ZWAARD, where he unleashes his studied, technical flow over beats that are so adventurous that 90% of MCs from any time period would struggle to find their footing. But Beans is such a pro, he makes it sound like he could pull up these lyrical tap dances in his sleep. So here we finally are at the top 10 for my 50 favorite hip-hop albums of 2024, and kicking off this last leg at 10, we have Los Angeles, the killer collaborative LP that was fittingly created by two veterans of LA underground hip-hop, one being the MC Blue, who usually teams up with Exile whenever he does a joint effort, but here he actually comes together with evidence of Dilated Peoples and Step Brothers, who displays his chops as a top-tier MC who also gets more than busy behind the boards, which is exactly what he does here, creating a set of instrumentals that meld together perfectly with the introspective bars. And as a lifelong resident of LA, I feel like this was a thoughtful love letter to the city, and much like the city, it has this sort of tension lurking underneath that keeps you on your toes throughout the whole experience. Following those two, for number 9, we have another rapper-producer collaboration, and it just so happens that both of these individuals are at the top of the game for their respective crafts, and I'm alluding to Boldy James and Conductor Williams, who, like many of the entries on this list, released other projects throughout the year, but without a doubt my favorite would have to be the one they did together, called Across the Tracks. Boldy has been basically just running victory laps at this point in his career, with so many quality releases under his belt and a sizable fan base that knows exactly what they're signing up for with each new Boldy James project. And that isn't to say he isn't ever trying anything new or improving. It's more a case of not needing to fix something that isn't broken. And as for Conductor Williams, he quite easily has become one of the most talented and exceptional producers to rise out of the Griselda movement, and these two both have styles that were basically a match made in heaven. Coming in at number 8, we have one of the more recent releases to grace this list, maybe the most recent, but it's one I'm pretty sure all of you could have seen coming, because I went with the latest Kendrick Lamar full-length GNX, an album I hardly think anyone needs much of a background on, considering it's one of, if not the most talked about hip-hop LPs to come out in 2024. But what I will say is for the most part I agree with the common consensus the majority of fans have regarding the surprise drop, where it may not necessarily be the densest or most grand musical undertaking K-Dot has to his name, but I don't think it's really supposed to be. What GNX does offer is Kendrick Lamar's most outwardly West Coast sounding project to date. And what I really love about this thing is it carries over my favorite quality of Not Like Us, which is this dirty, crip walk-inducing production largely aided by DJ Mustard, that has managed to take over the world and become relevant to youth anywhere you could think of, yet still remains true to the old school gangster rap that inspired Kendrick. Coming after him for number 7, we have one of the hardest working artists in modern hip-hop, Rhapsody, who's been an undeniable force in contemporary rap since 2010. And while she had some of the best projects to come out in the latter half of the 2010s, she stepped a little further outside her comfort zone for Please Don't Cry, her first full-length release to come out thus far in the 2020s, where she blesses us with an intelligent, thoughtful, and personal group of tracks that range from cloudy, lo-fi boom bap to jazzy and serene, more R&B flavored tunes. Then, following her at 6, I chose to go with one of the most heavily talked about and referenced LPs that 2024 had to offer, that being Chromacopia, the latest full-length from Tyler, the Creator, who's continued to distance himself from those early Odd Future days full of angst and edginess, and instead opts to craft an experience that sort of bridges the gap between his last two releases, which were 2019's Igor and 2021's Call Me If You Get Lost, delivering a mix of hard, bass-rattling beats, with his classic and instantly recognizable synth patterns, that are basically a trademark of Tyler's at this point. It's really cool to see how much progress this dude has made since I first started listening to him in like 2011. Because I remember there being a time where I would be a bit worried about the potential quality of each new album he announced, since the earlier days saw a bit of a back and forth swing of that pendulum. But now he's at a place where it's never really a matter of whether the next Tyler the Creator album will be good or bad, it's more just a question of how great it will be. And then heading into the top 5, we have the absolutely amazing LP Marciology by underground titan and pioneer rock Marciano, who I have to point out just recently put out a second project of 2024, which was called The Skeleton Key and is the second in line of collaborations he's done with The Alchemist. But not only did I pretty much have this list set in stone by the time that thing came out, but I already have both artists on here for different endeavors already, and as I mentioned earlier, I would be breaking the rule if I included an artist more than once. Well, I had to point that out just because the Skeleton Key is so ridiculously dope. I haven't had nearly as much time to sit with it, while Marciology has been in my constant listening rotation since it first came out, as it's yet another example of a veteran whose output's so consistent and prolific. It gets to a point where it's hard to imagine he can even improve upon this formula any further. Yet somehow Rock Marcy manages to prove that notion wrong with each new release, and with the decades of experience he has under his belt at this point, he basically embodies the role of an OG who's mastered his craft, and is basically just spitting his game and knowledge over divine sample flips. Coming in at number 4, we have Samurai, the latest full-length from one of the wittiest, most intricate and talented lyricists to ever pick up a pen, Lupe Fiasco, who of course changed the game with his late 2000s output, with masterpieces like Food and Liquor or The Cool, but then famously dropped the ball for many fans with lackluster releases like Food and Liquor 2 or Lasers. After that short but noticeable dip in quality, it was hard to tell what laid in store for the talented Chicago MC, but ever since 2015's Tetsuo and Youth, this man has steadily been on a quest to rebuild his status as one of the brightest talents in the game, and it's hard to deny how successful he's been in this venture, because he already proved he still had the ability to blend contemporary flows and trends with his usual more high concept and technical approach with 2022's drill music and Zion. But honestly, I think he upped the ante once again with Samurai, delivering a tight, concise, and incredibly polished LP where he unapologetically pays homage to his more Eastern influences over smooth, enjoyable production, and he reminds us once again why he's so often regarded as one of the best poets to grace hip-hop in the last few decades, arguably even the best. Grabbing the number 3 spot, we have someone who happened to show up on last year's top 50 list as the runner-up for Album of the Year, that being the enigmatic creative visionary JPEG Mafia, who in 2023 took that number 2 spot with Scaring the Hose, his off-the-wall collaboration with Danny Brown. But here he's just one notch under that with his latest solo undertaking, I Lay Down My Life For You. I've talked about various artists throughout this video that I feel have been improving with each new release, sometimes even when it seemed like they couldn't get any better with their craft. But along with the 2 picks I have coming after this one, JPEG is really the epitome of someone who you think couldn't have any more tricks up his sleeve, but then pretty much every year he hits you with something new and exciting, sometimes multiple times in one year, and you better believe he accomplished that with his latest LP. The instrumentals basically sound as if the dude is grabbing any and every piece of reference material, then throwing it in a blender and somehow getting this golden smoothie of sound. And he's really mastered his knack for making more chill, airy, and atmospheric songs with a laid-back delivery, and then a minute later flipping whatever expectations you had on their head with brash, chaotic, and noisy walls of sound that ensure you never stay in one comfort zone too long. I also really quickly have to point out that I've noticed a huge improvement in JPEG's writing and wordplay, and I think he's at a point where he's really found out what pockets do and don't work for him. And as always, I'm super excited to see what this true innovator will attempt next going forward. taking that aforementioned coveted number 2 spot in my list, I had to go with hashtag #RichAxHaitian by Mac Homie, someone who I honestly thought had probably reached the peak of his abilities on his 2021 Pray for Haiti album. But while he's been extremely active since then, this latest project could definitely be argued as his best work, because he constantly utilizes his off-kilter, instantly recognizable delivery, along with his addictive, monotone voice, that just glides over these diverse, innovative loops. It also doesn't hurt that we get a stellar group of features from old school legends like Black Thought, and contemporaries like the God Fahim and Rock Marciano, all the way to artists I never would have expected Makami to collaborate with, like K Tronada and O3 Greta. Which highlights another commendable aspect of this LP and its creator, that being how this is an MC who really isn't afraid to take risks and push himself outside his comfort zone. And not only does he manage to pull these moments off and execute them flawlessly, but even just the attempt to keep his work from becoming stale and boring shows a growth and maturity and speaks to why this dude's continued to rise, while many of the fellow underground rappers he came up with either plateaued because they haven't found a way to progress, or they just kind of fell to the wayside, which is something I really don't envision happening to this dude anytime soon. And finally, closing out this extensive list of 2024 LPs, my number one favorite hip-hop album of the year, without a shadow of a doubt, would have to go to the late legend Ka, who, prior to his tragic passing earlier in the year, managed to gift us with one last amazing piece of work, with this unforgettable addition to his nearly unparalleled discography, The Thief Next to Jesus. First off, I don't want to hear anything about, oh, you just put this so high because he died. Because while obviously plenty of dope projects came out this year after Ka passed, I had already decided this was going to be my top prospect for that number one spot. And even though I was open to another release coming along and passing it up, that just didn't end up happening because I truly don't think I heard any other album throughout 2024 that was as top to bottom spotless as The Thief Next to Jesus. Much like MF Doom, Ka was one of those MCs who often approached each track with sort of a trademark flow and style of writing, structuring their verses with these sets of rhyme schemes that they reserve for all sorts of contexts, though in this case, that comes in the form of raw, slightly unsettling tracks, where Ka spits his dense, structured poetry over these masterfully chopped, minimal, and grimy instrumentals, all of which were 100% handled by the master lyricist himself. And with that, we finally reached the end of my top 50 hip-hop albums of 2024 list. Thank you for watching, and if you made it this far, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite albums this year were. Don't forget to have a happy holidays, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.